And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we're talking about what to watch for in the joint practices against the New England Patriots. Next, we're going to be talking about the unofficial depth chart here. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start for what to watch for in these joint practices against the New England Patriots. And so I think the very first thing to look out for in these joint practices here is the line to scrimmage battle. And I think that is something that is going to be important on both sides of the ball for the Washington Commanders. Make no mistake about it. Look, we can talk about Jaden Daniels. We can talk about all the additions here on offense. We can talk about all the additions here on defense. But the bottom line, to win in the National Football League and to do it at a high level, you have to dominate the line of scrimmage. And so starting with the defense, I think that this is going to be a great opportunity to see what you can do against the run game. I do think that just with the type of play style that Coach Mike Vrabel likes to, I think, really bring to a football team, just going back to his time with the Titans, they like to run the football back then. And so I think that the Patriots are going to try to run the football at the Washington Commanders in these joint practices, especially when it comes down to the scrimmages and things like that. And so I want to see, how much better this team looks against the run. I think that is something that Coach Joe Wood Jr. talked about in his last press conference, and just talking about how, look, it was about all three levels. And so let's see if all three levels come out and they are connected here in this joint practice. And so I think that this is going to be a huge step forward, not just, for the defense, but also too for the offensive line here when we're talking about the line of scrimmage. And so we'll talk about that in a moment. But definitely, I think from a confidence standpoint for this defense to now go against another team here in this joint practice, to see, what you're looking like against runs and things like that. I think that this can go a long way as far as really establishing that confidence and just really that identity and nastiness that you want to have against the run. And so I do expect the Patriots to really go out here and see what the Commanders are made of as far as stopping the run. So the next thing here, when you're talking about the line of scrimmage and the offensive line, I think about, just what Jaden Daniels is going to face in this next season. And so starting there, we want to see, does this offensive line really hold up when they start to come after Jaden Daniels? Because I do think that is probably going to be the game plan for a lot of teams. They're going to try to come after Jaden Daniels. They're going to try to get him off his spots, try to rattle him and make him uncomfortable, although we know that he is definitely cool under pressure here. But I definitely think that is probably going to be the plan from a lot of teams. And so let's just see how well this offensive line is going to do against the blitz. And then next, I think the second thing here for the offensive line and really dominating the line of scrimmage, they've got to be able to run the football. And I talked about this from last season, that the Washington Commanders had a ton of success when they were able to dominate in the time of possession. And so I think that the running game definitely certainly looks like it got better from last season. That's going to be a point we're going to talk about here in a moment. But you're going to have to open up some running lanes here for these running backs, because if Jaden Daniels is cooking the way that he did last year, which I think is going to be even better, then I think that you can just count this offense in for just being pretty much unstoppable, because they're going to be able to run the football down opposing defenses' throats here, and you're keeping the opposing offense off the field. So it just makes this offense, this football team, awfully dangerous to stop. And so I think that is point number one in what we're looking for as far as just at these joint practices, the line of scrimmage. And so the next thing here, just going into the defense and just thinking about it a little bit more here. And so once you get past the line of scrimmage, I want to see just how good this secondary is, because I think right now the secondary could possibly be one of the strongest points of the defense right now, because I think with Trey Amos and then a healthy Marshawn Lattimore here, if these guys are as good as advertised and able to really lock wide receivers up on an island, I mean, that really makes this passing defense very dangerous, because these two corners are corners that look like they are going to try to take every opportunity possible to take the football away from opposing offenses. Then you look at the fact that I just think our secondary as a whole is one that is physical. I think that it is one that looks like it is going to come up and it's all about getting into the running or the ball carrier, and just making contact here. And so I want to just see how nasty they are and if they are able to turn the football over in this joint practice. And so I want to see what it looks like, because they will be going against Stephon Diggs and a couple of other wide receivers and things like that. And so this is the first time that you're going against a team that is just not your own team. And so let's see what that looks like. But the secondary is definitely something that I'm looking forward to seeing. And then next, when we start to talk about these joint practices and stuff, this is where you really highlight the rookies. And so starting with a guy like Trey Amos, he is going to be going against a guy like the Stephon Diggs here. And so you're not going against, your own players and things like that. Now, they're going to be giving you different looks and stuff like that. And it's just going to be a matter of, okay, Trey Amos, this is going to be one of the tougher learning curves, I think, as a corner, right? It's trusting what you can do, all right, and trusting that you know where to be at, and then also, too, just making the plays and things like that, but doing it at the NFL speed. So he's going to get his first taste here against an opposing team and against an established wide receiver. And so let's see if all the things that we've been seeing in practice is going to translate for him. Next thing here, for Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, just talking about this running game and going back a couple points ago, I think that the running game is definitely a lot better than what it was last season. And I think that this is the first real step to prove that. And Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, has been looking terrific out there. I mean, he is just getting himself into the creases and gaps into the offensive line and getting into the second level of defenses. And he's running with power as well. And so let's see what this looks like now in this joint practice. Is he the type of guy that is going to be able to run through contact? Because I think that that's going to go a long way for Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt and possibly securing this RB1 role by the end of the season. And also, too, I think that for him, like I said, I think that this is more so a marathon more than it is a sprint, and it is when it comes down to the football season. But I think for him, if he can put himself into RB3 territory, I think that there is a great chance for Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, to be RB1. And so this is the first time that we get a chance to see him go against an opposing team. Next, Jalen Lane. And so Jalen Lane, we get a chance to see his versatility. And so, we'll see what they do when they line him up with the ones and stuff like that. And let's see how Cliff Kingsbury elects to use him. But I do think that, as this thing kind of drags on with Terry McLaurin and things like that, you've got to start just being conscious and just really making sure that you have players ready just in case, a holdout does continue into the season. And so this is going to be an important moment here for Jalen Lane as a rookie to really step up. Next, for Josh Conley Jr., this is going to be a moment for him on that offensive line going against another opposing team. And so we've been hearing about, the challenges and battles that he's been having out there against Von Miller. We've been hearing about the technique and how good he is there. You hear players raving about how he is a sponge, but, you can take it in the classroom, and it's one thing to practice against your team, but now you're going against another team. And so let's see, can Josh Conley Jr. hold up on the offensive line here? And so I think that is going to be another interesting point. And then lastly, Kane Medrano. And so Kane Medrano has been turning some heads here in practice as of late. And then I just am seeing, that Jordan McGee has been out. And so he's been stepping up in this role here at linebacker since he's been out. And so he's a little bit of a hybrid between that linebacker and then also, too, a safety here. But I was wondering what he would look like in the box. And so far, it looks like that he's a player that can be physical. We knew he could cover, but now this is going to be a terrific opportunity for him because he has a chance to get out here and show some more. And I do think that if he continues to take a step forward, we're now talking about him going from just a bench rotational role to maybe a rotational maybe he's getting in there for a little bit of those packages that Coach Joe Wood Jr. was talking about, where he wanted to run some of the 3 linebacker sets. Now, I know that that's a big step forward here, but I think that a good joint practice here, or joint practices, I should say, and then also, too, a good preseason could go a long way here for Kane Medrano. And so next thing I wanted to talk about here was the unofficial depth chart here for the Washington Commanders going into preseason football Friday. And so I think that the first key takeaway out of this that I saw was that it has Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt 4th on the depth chart. Now, I'll say this from the clips and what I'm reading here, it does not seem like Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt is the 4th best back here for the Washington Commanders. And so we'll see what happens. I think he is going to get a lot of work here in this first game. And so, like I said, I think that if he can come out of preseason as RB3, I think that he has a real chance to be in the running here for RB1. And so the next thing that I saw here on the unofficial depth chart is that Andrew Wally and Josh Connolly Jr., it has them for it, Andrew Wally or Josh Connolly Jr. So suggesting that that probably is going to be more of a rotation. And so let's see what happens with that as preseason goes on and as Josh Connolly continues to grow as a player. And then next up, with Von Miller, it has Von Miller listed as the starting outside linebacker here with Jacob Martin at the 2. And so keep in mind that with Von Miller, look, he is going to be our pass rush specialist. But I think that between the two of these guys, I think that Jacob Martin is going to have to play a significant role on these early downs and things like that. And so that was something that was caught my eye here on the unofficial depth chart. The next, it has Trey Amos starting. And so I don't think that Trey Amos starting or listed as a starter on the unofficial depth chart is anything that is a big surprise here. I think that this was something that it seems like it's trending towards happening. And I think that this is going to be a huge step for him at these joint practices and the preseason. And so if he can handle these things very well, I can definitely see him as a starter to start off here. And so I'm just so excited to see what he is going to look like come week 1. But so far, he's off to a great start. So he's on the unofficial depth chart as the starter. As far as our safeties, we have Will Harris at the strong safety. We have Quan Martin at the free safety. And then when it comes down to the linebackers right now, and so when you look at that on the unofficial depth chart, I thought that that was another thing to note here. So behind Bobby Wagner, you have Jordan McGee, and then you have Kane Medrano. And so keep in mind that Jordan McGee has been out the last couple days here. I'm sure we'll find out what the update is going into Wednesday, but Kane Medrano has been turning some heads. And so I wonder, is this a chance for Kane Medrano to maybe jump Jordan McGee here? But that's, again, a tall order. But right now, Kane Medrano been looking good here in practices as of late. And so with that being said, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking here as far as what you're looking forward to seeing here in these joint practices. Like I said, I've got the line to scrimmage. That's being point number 1 for the Washington Commanders on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. Next, going into the running game here and just seeing, does this offensive line kind of open up the run game here? Are they able to also protect Jaden Daniels? Is that connection with Deebo Samuel there as well? And then the next thing, too, to look forward to looking at here in these joint practices is, what does our secondary look like? Because I think that it has the potential to be the strongest unit on this defense as far as, the front half, back half, whatever. But I'm very excited to see what this secondary is going to do. It could be a secondary that gets a lot more takeaways this season. And so we get a chance to see that. And then lastly, let me know what you guys are thinking here with these rookies. Who are you looking forward to see here in these joint practices as we lead up to preseason? And let me know what you guys are thinking about the unofficial depth chart. And so before we jump out of here, as we always say, look, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.